Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous day already. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, jazzerciser, runner, Michigan girl who's been freezing in Florida. Well, not Michigan. I was born in Florida, but I grew up in Michigan and I've been freezing, y'all. So I hope that everyone is enjoying this brief little warm-up that at least we're having here in Florida. It's still cold, but it's warmer than it has been. In any case, I am also a wellness advocate studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And I started Wellness Wednesday because I've been on life acting a fool again. I've been on a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression and have learned that when people with similar experiences, also known as peers, get together and share information, it can be very, very helpful to everyone. So I started Wellness Wednesday to share some of my journey and share some of what I've learned and continue learning from you, which is why I always encourage you to comment, ask questions, whatever, in the comments, because even though sometimes Facebook hides things and doesn't always show them to me, even if I don't answer them because I don't see them, I will still answer them when I get done. And I love, love, love the interaction. I love the new ideas, all of that. So, if you have been following me for a while, then you know last week's video was about unlearning. And I was really that's just a topic that's been on my heart for a while. I will drop the link to that video in the comments. Remember that videos stay on Facebook for 30 days. And then after that, well, even the day, within an hour usually after I go live, you can find the video on my YouTube channel as well. So that way you have it on demand and you can listen to it as you wish after that 30 days where Facebook drops it. So last week I talked about unlearning. There was one thing that I didn't mention under the unlearning umbrella of, things that we are known to, kind of inherit. And it seems to be popping up a lot. So it seemed like a good topic for today. And that is over explanation. And of course, anytime I hear the word explanation, I'm a pop culture girl, but selectively, if you will. I have a big time music brain problem. People that know me know this and they've seen me make a fool of myself over it in the past. I forgot to say, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments. In any case, people that are close to me have seen me make a fool out of myself because of my music. It's movie quotes. Sometimes it's older shows. And of course, everything kind of shows my age a little bit. So as soon as I started talking about or thinking about doing unexplained or over-explaining, the first place I went was, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. And I just couldn't help it. So I always like to make a good nod, do a strong nod toward things that inspire, some of my jokes. So it wasn't what inspired the topic, but it certainly became integrated quickly with the topic. So anyway, so we're going to talk about over-explaining. And if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, you can still ask questions, drop comments. I will answer them as soon as I see them. And let's ask the question, what is the definition of over-explaining? Well, the definition of over-explaining, according to Merriam-Webster, online dictionary, is to explain or justify to an excessive degree. And then AI, because nowadays we have to have this AI overview, whenever we Google search something. AI says that over-explaining is giving excessive, often unnecessary details or justifications or context for simple statements. So that is kind of the definition of over-explaining. And I got to tell you, I am so guilty of getting aggravated with other people when they're over-explaining things. And I'm just as stinking guilty, if not more so, as doing it. Seriously. So, there's a quote about, one is a Bible quote, but there's several other quotes too. But what comes to mind is, pointing out the speck in your brother's eye before you remove the plank in your own eye. And basically what that boils down to is very often the things that aggravate us in other people are often things we are guilty of ourselves. This notwithstanding, as I said, I am extremely guilty of getting aggravated when people over-explain or go on or give too much information, and I am just as guilty of doing it. Trying to tell me because it's trying to reconnect again. In any case, why do we feel the need to over-explain or justify choices or decisions? First of all, if you're here, let me know in the comments, raise your hand, whatever, if you frequently feel the need to over-explain or justify your choices or your decisions. So why do we do that? Why do we do that? Lord knows I do. It's a habit. It's not a character flaw, y'all. That's it. It's a habit. And it's likely related to any or several of the following things. It is often a trauma or dysfunction response. And by dysfunction, I mean dysfunctional communication patterns when you were growing up, dysfunctional households. It's also part of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I had a definition on that, and I can't remember what I did with it right now. But basically where we start fawning all over somebody else to try to appease the situation, which also kind of falls under the umbrella of people pleasing, which is another reason why we tend to do this. People pleasing, where we're looking for external validation or approval. We want to keep everybody happy. We want everybody to like us. So if we perceive by their face or their initial response or, expression that they're not happy with what we're saying, then we over-explain and we justify and we give all kinds of excessive information to try to pad the situation and try to make their expression or control how they feel about it, basically. So yes, trauma, dysfunction response, people-pleasing, external validation or approval, anxiety, and the need for control. This is a huge reason. A lot of times, you heard what I just said about trying to make everybody happy. We are often trying to control how others are going to respond before we even get there. So that's a huge part of anxiety. I can speak to that personally, and that need to control the outcome of a situation. Internet keeps cutting me out. I don't know what's going on here. I just keep getting a message that says that it's weak and it's, resetting or something like that. So another reason is social conditioning. Social conditioning often produces this need to over-explain. Hey, Miss Stacy. It comes from things we grow up with. We've talked about this. We talked about this a lot in the unlearning video. Children or women should be seen and not heard. Children or women, specifically women, should be agreeable. Children should not take up space, should not be a burden. And a lot of times these things were directed at children and women. And this is, it's not as bad now, but there was some social conditioning that came along with that. Hey, Miss Victoria. And then, of course, power dynamics. Power dynamics are almost always involved in this need to over-explain. If we're kids, it could, or adults that found ourselves in trouble a lot as kids. I was one of those. It comes from a fear of getting in trouble, especially with a perceived authority figure. And I experienced that a few times in my jobs. And you may have experienced that in your jobs too, where you're hesitant to ask for time off, or you're hesitant to speak up about some mistreatment or whatever, or hesitant to speak up about anything. So a lot of times that comes out of those power dynamics where you feel like somebody else is in control of you or has power over you. Fear of being misunderstood or judged, or chronically feeling misunderstood. These again, Victoria, I know you came in just a hair late, and so did Stacy. This is reasons why we feel the need to over-explain or justify choices, decisions, etc. So fear of being misunderstood or judged, and chronically feeling misunderstood. If we don't feel heard as children, like if we feel as children or as we're growing up or in our relationships speak up, then we start feeling chronically unheard or misunderstood. And so that results in the need to over-explain, over-identify, just provide way too much information anytime we try to stand up for ourselves. Yes, Victoria, I see you're feeling that one a little bit. And low self-esteem or lack of self-trust is a huge driver behind this. It can exist in itself, but usually exists in some form or fashion as a result of any of the things that I already said. And then, of course, there's a biological component in the form of neurodivergence for people that are on the autism spectrum or people with ADHD or ADD. A lot of times this over-explanation or need to justify choices is it was described when I looked at it as a tendency to actually think or try to organize their thoughts out loud, which is a lot of times where that over-explanation comes from. So those are the reasons that we often feel, or many of the reasons, probably not all, it's not an exhaustive list, why we feel the need to over-explain or justify choices, decisions, etc. So what does that look like in real life? Well, if you're feeling some of that stuff I listed off, you probably already have a good idea. But here's what it has looked like for me, what it looked like according to a couple of articles that I looked up for this, and that is over-apologizing or apologizing for our needs. I really feel this way, or I really need this, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry if it's an inconvenience. I don't know why I feel this way. I mean, I can keep going. You know what I mean? I can keep going. Trying to preempt criticism when we are coming out of the gate with a giant long-winded disclaimer about why we feel this way and the whole 9 yards, so that we don't get criticized for it, so that there's a complete, rich, contextual backstory for whoever it is that we're delivering this information to. So trying to preempt criticism, basically explain the whole thing so that they know the why before you get to the how. Being long-winded or wordy, which kind of fits into that. Repeating points or continuously adding layers to the story, to the information. But really, most of the time what it is excessive detail or continuing to explain, or after the decision's been made and you're still explaining to them or to yourself why you were justified in asking for what you asked for, whatever it was. So what is that? If you're feeling a little confused, here's some personal examples that I can use to demonstrate. You look great. Well, thanks, but I wasn't sure if this went with this, and my hair's been kind of wonky today. And then there's this whole long-winded, who feels me? Raise your hand if you feel me. This whole long-winded explanation instead of just a simple thank you so much. Because we have to explain why, even though you think we look great, we don't feel like we look great, and why you shouldn't either. Right? So another example is, can you help me with, is the question. And then we respond with, I'm sorry, I can't because I had this happen and this happened and then this, and I really wish I could, but I also have this and this, and oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Just say no. We can't just say no. We can't just say thank you. Especially if we're long-term, if we've been dealing with anxiety long-term or any kind of a trauma response, this is a problem. We have a very difficult time just giving simple answers because we feel like we need to explain everything. More than likely because at some point in time we've been made to feel like we need to explain everything. So yeah, long disclaimers. Before expressing your feelings, giving a gift. This is one of my favorites, and I've been guilty also. Here's the gift. Oh, I love it. Well, I wasn't sure what you like, and I wasn't sure what to get, and I thought about this, and I thought about this, and I asked so-and-so. If they love the gift, or just give them the gift. The fact that you thought to, and like I said, I've been guilty so many times, I always have to explain. I mean, if there's a funny story behind it, like when I got Eric a bag of croutons with heart stickers all over them, for Valentine's Day, if there's a funny explanation, that's great. But you don't need to do that all the time, especially with gifts. A lot of times, just the fact that you thought to do something for someone is enough of an explanation. Again, if there's a cool story, funny story, that's fine. And then, one of my favorites, like I said, is the long end. Like, I have to give a backstory. I can remember when one of the first times I felt like I needed to kind of stand up for myself and draw a boundary in one of my relationships. And I've really just never been terribly good with confrontation. Getting better, still not terribly good at it. And so I perceived, and still do sometimes, I perceived anytime I was expressing my feelings as a confrontation point, that was going to cause a problem in some way, shape, or form. And again, raise your hand if you feel me and you understand what I'm talking about. So I would launch into this long dissertation beforehand. Well, this happened the other day, and then this happened, and this is why. And this long dissertation to kind of pad the landing of me expressing my feelings when it's totally not necessary. Totally not necessary. So those are examples of what it looks like. Those are examples of what over-explaining looks like. And yes, it may seem like sometimes I over-explain a little bit here, but that's for the sake of repetition. And, if people come into the video at different points in times, making sure everybody gets it. Not when we're actually expressing needs or feelings or making decisions about what's right for us. So, how do we unlearn this? Oh, and I forgot. This is the last and most important thing under what does it look like? When does it happen the most? When do you think it happens the most? It happens the most when we're telling someone no, or when we're telling someone how we feel. That's when the over-explaining happens the most. So, how do we unlearn it? I think where this first started for me was after I read an article. This was many, many years ago. I read an article, not the same boss I have now, about asking for time off versus stating that you're taking time off. And it made a lot of sense to me at a time. I was reading a lot of stuff about assertiveness. I did not feel very assertive. I really struggled with assertiveness. And I had initially asked my boss at the time about changing my work schedule so that I could come in just a little bit later. I think I wanted to change 10 and leave at 6 instead of 5. Or maybe I wanted to do a little earlier. I don't remember. I just remember it would have given me at least an hour with nobody else in the office so that I could get some things done uninterrupted. And she wouldn't go for it. And I was really disappointed and a little pissy. I had read this article, fast forward a little bit. I had read this article and it said that it basically indicated that I should not ask for time off. I should state this, I'm taking this day off. And, if you have the PTO, whatever, to cover it, then you shouldn't have to ask. You should just state that you're taking that day off. Again, with enough notice, going through whatever channels are required to make sure you give it appropriate notice. And I really, really struggled with this. And so, again, I was still a little pissy about not being able to change my work schedule by an hour when I had literally no impact on anyone else in the office. So I marched in, and it was really, really hard for me. This is what I remember. I remember it being really hard for me because I was to state, this article basically suggested that I was to state that I was going to take the day off and then not give a reason why. And I did not know how not to give a reason why. I just didn't know how. And I did legit have an appointment that day. So, but I was going to just go to the appointment and come in later, whatever. So I walked into my boss's office and I'm like, I'm going to be taking X day off. And she said, okay. And I walked back out of the office. And it was so hard not to be like, because I have this doctor's appointment or because I don't like you and I want to take the day off to get away from you. It was so hard not to preamble and follow up and the whole 9 yards. It was so difficult. And there's a lot of different schools of thought on that. Before you go telling your boss you're taking the next year off or whatever, there are a lot of different schools of thought on that in terms of it's your PTO. Do you have a right to take it off or do you have to ask permission? And that's going to be up to you individually. I had a couple interesting things here I can drop in the comments for you just in case that's of interest to you. But we're really not just talking about asking for time off today. So how do we unlearn this? Well, first we have to recognize that it's a problem for us and do so without becoming defensive. Sooner or later, someone's going to mention it. Somebody's going to look at you while you're talking and they're going to go, or you're going to be able to see in your face. This happened to me with a more recent boss, and who had stopped me when I was over explaining before politely. But once she did that, I could see in her eyes, that glazed over rolled eye look, when I was doing too much explaining. And so that helps me. And I had to recognize it without becoming defensive. And that's really hard for me even now, because a lot of times if I'm explaining, it's because I feel like what? Like I need to clarify because I'm not going to be clearly understood. Somebody might think that I meant this instead of that. And what does that all boil down to? It all boils down to trying to control the outcome or the response. So the first step to unlearning is recognizing it and then not becoming defensive once you learn to recognize it. Because again, somebody is going to mention it. Somebody's going to be like, hurry up, I don't have time. Can you get to the point? Or they're going to make hand motions or faces or whatever. And you're going to be like, oh, I need to speed up this process. So once we recognize it, we've got to identify, kind of inventory it, if you will. What caused us to feel like we need to do that? What raised the flag? What feelings or inadequacies are associated with us doing that? What was in our mind when we thought, we felt like we had to explain that we wanted to go out with the girls to a movie because every time we ever left the house without the previous significant other, they always freaked out on us. So now we got to explain that to every significant other ever going forward for the rest of our lives. We need to examine what it is that prompts us to do that. And if we have someone we love and trust, we can ask them to raise a flag when we're doing it. And that helps us to recognize it as it's happening. Again, we have to be non-defensive about it and to identify and inventory the feelings that are associated with it. And then there's a confidence issue. And a lot of times this always comes with a confidence issue, whether that's the cause or a happy byproduct. And yes, I'm being sarcastic. But we have to find evidence that we can trust ourselves. And we've talked about that evidence a lot. Our brains are going to look for evidence of whatever we're telling ourselves. If we're telling ourselves that we're not trustworthy and that we need to give all this explanation because nobody in the history of anybody could ever possibly understand why we're feeling the way we are, or doing what we're doing, or making the decision we're making, then evidence of why that's the case. But if we're like, no, I am just this is my decision, and I'm just going to put it out there, and I'm not going to explain it, and I'm going to trust myself because I'm trustworthy to make the right decisions, then our brains will find evidence to prove that we are right about that. So we need to find evidence. I actually started an evidence file. I talked about this a couple of videos ago because of the struggle that I have even with assignments in school. Like if I do something that I think is a little weird, I want to submit my assignment with an explanation of why I did what I did. And I have to stop myself because I know they don't care. They don't necessarily care about the why. If I've hit the rubric, they're moving on. You know what I mean? So we need to build that evidence file, whether it's mental, whether it's a physical evidence file that says we can make good decisions and we are trustworthy when doing so that we can build the confidence to speak for ourselves and not over-explain, then that's what we have to do. So confidence in our decision and self-trust, that means finding evidence that we are perfectly capable of making the right decisions and trusting ourselves with those. And then we need to know the difference between clarity, which is sharing what's needed, and over-explaining, which is defending what doesn't need defending. So clarity is, and just because I just use this as the most recent example, clarity is, hey babe, I'm going to go over to Inverness Movie Theater with Victoria. You're on my screen, so I'm going to use you. With Victoria, and we're going to check out this movie. Over-explaining is, well, babe, I know that you were planning this and you were planning this, and I don't know if you had anything planned for that night, but Victoria asked me if I wanted to go to the movies, and we haven't gotten together in a while. So I was like, sure. And this is what we're going to go see. And this is where, and you know, I don't have to go if that's uncomfortable for you. You see, all the explanation doesn't matter what the words are. It's all that additional explanation that is not needed. So it's knowing the difference between clarity, here's where I'm going to be, who I'm going to be with, and when I'm going to be home, to, and over explaining, which is defending the fact that you've made the decision to go to the movie with a friend. There's a huge difference there. It's not about being unclear. It is about not having to justify your right to choose or feel or whatever. So there's a suggested formula. I found this cool article on LinkedIn. His name, the author is, really have to sign in to LinkedIn to be able to access it. And I guess I'm going to have to reset my modem because I don't know what's going on with my internet today. And it is, the title of it is Why You Over-Explain and How to Stop Using Just 6 Words. And I thought this was really cool. So he's got a formula. Justin has a formula that he suggests that makes a lot of sense to me. And that formula is appreciation plus no plus well wishes. So he uses some examples here too. Like when you give a gift, sorry if it's not something you like, I wasn't sure what to get, and blah, blah, blah. When you can't accept an invitation, these are bad examples. Sorry, I can't make it. I have an early appointment the next morning, ... continue. So when he says how to stop over explaining with just 6 words, he says you have to practice over and over and over again. And trust me, I do have to practice over and over and over again. And when we practice, we learn that people actually appreciate short, concise answers. Let me tell you what it's like rewriting my papers for the same reason. So the appreciation plus the no plus the well wishes. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I actually don't have time in my schedule right now. I know it will be a great event. That's simple. Now, that's more than 6 words, but I think what he means is each one of those sections is 6 words, or each one of those sentences. Sometimes we don't even have to go that far. If somebody gives us a compliment, say thank you. 1 word, not 6, not 3 sentences, 1 word. Thank you. If you want it to be longer, try thank you so much. It's really hard. You have no idea how hard it is until you catch yourself doing it and you don't realize how much you over-explain, justify, even when somebody's giving you a compliment. And then he's got, thanks for sharing what you're up to. Right now, I'm not in the market for this product. I wish you the best with this. So again, appreciation, no, well wishes. I love that you're passionate about this. I won't be able to make it. Let me know how it goes. I know you'll crush it. Appreciation, no, well wishes. No explanation in there whatsoever. I mean, he does have I don't have a time in my schedule, but we don't like to tell people we don't have time in the schedule, right? Because we're told that if it's important, we'll make time. So we like to tell people, drive clear over here from the other side of the county. You see what I mean? So that's a great formula. I'll drop that link in the comments. Remember, you will have to sign in LinkedIn probably to see it, although it didn't make me sign in to look at the article. I just don't know if you can go much farther. So my challenge to you, I hope some of this made sense. I hope some of it resonated with you. My challenge to you, now that it's on your radar, because it's going to be like the red car effect. Now that it's on your radar, you are more likely to notice when you're doing it. That happens to me a lot. I'll hear somebody talk about something, read an article about something, and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. So my challenge to you, notice one time this week when you might be over-explaining, over-justifying, whatever. And then stop 1 sentence earlier than usual. 1 sentence. And sit with that discomfort. Remember, we don't like to be uncomfortable. Discomfort is a sign of growth. It means we're growing. It means we're stepping out of our comfort zone. So, notice one time this week, stop 1 sentence earlier than usual when you are over-explaining and sit with that discomfort. Just like me, I had to really fight with myself not to tell my boss that day why I needed the day off. Frankly, it was none of her business. It's nobody's business why we need to take a day off on any given day if we have the PTO and it's not going to impact where we work. It's nobody's business. Doesn't matter what we're doing with it. We could be sitting on the beach with a margarita. Doesn't matter. So that's my challenge to you. Notice one time this week when you're over-explaining, over-justifying, stop one sentence earlier than usual and then sit with that discomfort. Don't give in. Don't go back. Don't go back and be like, and, just don't do it. See if you can do it. Let me know. Shoot me a comment, shoot me a message, drop a comment. And then remember these things as you go forward into that challenge in this next week. Over-explaining is not the same as communicating. And often it makes communication harder because we fill that empty space with so much extra that's not necessary to get to the point or the decision. Number 2, we don't owe explanations for boundaries, and discomfort doesn't mean we're wrong. We absolutely do not owe explanations for how we feel, for any of that. And because we're uncomfortable with it doesn't mean that our desire. Finally, self-trust grows. And this one I want you to think about really hard because I have to think about it on a regular basis. So I know that it's going to resonate with somebody. Self-trust grows, and therefore self-confidence, when we stop asking permission for our choices, for our rights, for our needs, and for our feelings. That's super important. Definitely take some time to marinate on that. Self-trust grows when we stop asking permission for how we feel, what we need, the choices we make, or our basic rights. Okay? So that's all I have for today. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please share. You can also share if you have somebody specific in mind, you can share to their messenger. I won't know the difference. But I do love it when you guys share, when you interact. And this will be on Facebook for 30 days. You'll be able to go back to it, rewatch, listen. Of course, within the next hour, it'll also be on YouTube for you to see on demand. I will drop some links in the comments to last week's video, to my YouTube channel, and to this LinkedIn article with Justin's formula. And as always, I hope you have a fabulous day and a fabulous week. And until next Wednesday, be well.